It's just a friendly church. It's where the word is being given, and friendly is just friendly.
I'm so glad to see Friendly Temple grow.
Yeah, we made it. We really made it. We come a long way, but we made it.
Friendly Temple Missionary Baptist Church stands as a pillar of hope for a community and a congregation that's mushroomed from hundreds to thousands of members.
Abraham was told to leave his town. Said, Abraham, get up, pack away, leave your city, leave your family, and go to a land. Where am I going, God? I'm not telling you.
When we heard the pastor preach, it was on New Year's Eve. I remember it. We came back that evening for the midnight service. And that was the first time I can ever recall where I said I wanted to go back to church.
And it's such a big part of my life. I couldn't see not being that friendly.
With an electrifying choir, a presence in the community that's unmistakable, and a dynamic pastor, Friendly Temple has grown into a powerful voice for the Lord in a once forgotten corridor of St. Louis, Missouri. But the road to the present was long and hard. It's a vision that began in 1955 with the current pastor's grandfather, Reverend Robert Fulton Davis. Spirit-led to sow fresh seeds in the heart of St. Louis's inner city, Reverend Davis called upon 3 faithful Christians to organize a new church.
Friendly Temple was born at 3514 Evans with 3 letters. Sister Irma Bennett, Carrie Mize, Sister Willie Lee Shaw. 2 of them has gone home. There's 1 here to witness.
Others eager to be part of this new building joined soon after the church was officially organized. People like Pastor Davis's wife, Leola Davis, Dorothy Turner, and the church's first secretary, Ida Hardin.
And it was few of us, so we had dinner, programs, raised money.
And there were others who stood faithful. Roma Adams, Willie Wilder, and Friendly Temple's first deacon.
Brother Simpson is dead and gone now, which was chairman of the deacon board. Stood up and told me one day, he said, Pastor, I had a dream that you were pastoring a big church, and that church was full. I say, I've been having that dream for a long time. Brother Simpson and I...
Reverend Davis and the first members of Friendly Temple would see many challenges, not unlike those that other young churches of the day faced.
Well, you had folk, but they didn't make much money, so naturally they couldn't put much in church. It was very small, very little.
Though times were tough, faith and commitment would bring them through.
Reverend Davis give us hope. We know we're going to make it. Yeah, we know we're going to make it. He got one Monday morning and found that little white church and had us to clean it up. And we cleaned it up and we had service in that next Sunday.
Patricia Johnson, the church's first musician, remembers the modest beginnings on Evans.
Evans was a little building with no bathroom. We had to go outside and walk around the back to the bathroom. And when it rained, we had to sit on one side of the church because the rain, and set buckets on the other side of the church because water would come in the building.
We had the tuck pointed and concrete around the walls and everything because when it rained, water run through the aisle. But it was 7, 8 of us. We stuck it out.
And stuck it out they did. In just 7 years, the Friendly Church family outgrew that little white church on Evans. The church moved to a new house of worship in 1962, 3 miles away on Belt Avenue. It was a bigger house, a better house, and a place that Friendly would call home for the next 25 years. What began on Evans with a handful of Christian servants, the Lord multiplied to more than 200 at the church house on Belt.
An amazing little place, former Jewish synagogue. Tiny place, but live, just really live. A little kitchen down there, we were cooking every Sunday, bumping your head trying to get down there. The smell of chicken and greens, drifting through the auditorium while you were having service. Real Southern kind of feel to it.
But there were a lot of meals cooked in that tiny, tiny kitchen. We killed a lot of chickens.
Well, Friendly Temple was at 1488 Belt, and I moved to 5521 Wells, and it was right around the corner. And at that time, I wasn't driving. I said, I'm going to join the closest church I can. So I had an auntie live next door. She said, please go to Friendly Temple. They are friendly around there. And you will love that pastor, Reverend Davis.
Many were fond of Reverend Davis as a pastor and as a friend.
Joseph a fine car and a plate in a home. And his car was parked in front of the church, and me and Reverend W.S. Jones were together. And he was a big joker, And Reverend Davis's car was parked in front of the church. And he, look at yonder, Davis church is bigger, Davis car is big as this church. Stretched all the way across the front. And he nicknamed him Big Car Davis, and I never would have said that around Reverend Davis because I figured he'd get mad when he heard about it, and he just laughed.
Above all, Pastor Davis wanted Friendly Temple to be a place where people would find biblical teaching and a wealth of loving support as they developed in the Lord.
One thing he told me, he said, "Son, don't look at me, at what I do, or how you think I'm doing." Says, when I tell you something, go to the Bible and look it up. Said, then if you don't understand it, then you come to me.
Some who actively serve at Friendly today cherish the memories of support and inspiration they received from past leaders within the church.
Charles Brooks was the minister of music at Friendly Temple at the time, and he was kind of like a surrogate father to me. Actually, Charles Brooks was a remarkable musician. He was just so encouraging to help young people really perfect their gifts. And so I really had an opportunity to be under someone so great. Actually, he was the person that kept me in church. Every Sunday morning, he called me at 9 o'clock in the morning and make sure that I got here.
With Sister Carrie Myers, at the time, she was supervisor of the children's choir. And when I was about 15 or 16, I started helping her more so with the children's programs, their Easter and Christmas programs. And as she got older and health began to fail, I pretty much helped her by taking on that role. And then I've been supervisor ever since.
Members like Phyllis Jones and the late Carrie Myers found it easy to nurture Friendly's young ones under Pastor Davis, for he too had a special devotion to the youth. He named the Friendly Temple Children's Choir affectionately his RF Specials.
One of my earliest activities at Friendly was actually singing in our special choir. We had some tough supervisors. They believed in us doing our work, and then afterwards sitting on the bench and being quiet.
But even with stern supervision, the youth still had their fun.
Sometimes as kids, we would, when we should be in Sunday school, we would walk down to the confectionery because it was right down the corner.
We used to go down to Morrow's store, and after Sunday school, and the interesting thing is Mother Davis, Reverend Davis's wife, we had this huge oak tree. And every now and then, we go down and, go down to Morrow's, and we come back with all this candy. She'd open up her purse, we had to dump all the candy in there, and she'd give us raisins or grapes.
The building's balcony served as a playground and a training ground for the youth.
The church wasn't a very large church, so after the children sang, we went up to the balcony. We were excused to the balcony, so that's where we hung out and with all our friends and got in, they got in trouble.
That's where he learned how to direct. That's where he learned how to direct.
Leslie stood up on the chair and directed the choir from the balcony.
Sure did.
Pastor Davis would also spend years training and mentoring other ministers, cultivating them to spread the gospel message even beyond the walls of Friendly. Several would go on to pastor churches of their own. Among them, Will Davis, pastor of Good Samaritan Missionary Baptist Church; Louis Jenkins, pastor of New Morning Star Baptist Church; Alonzo Adams, pastor of New Jerusalem Missionary Baptist Church; James Atkins, pastor of First Baptist Church of Kinloch; and Walter Ford, pastor of Deborah Baptist Church. And there was another important trainee, Reverend Davis's own grandson, Michael Jones.
Because it's not unusual. When God decided to take the children of Israel from Egypt, he used Moses. When he decided to let them go into the promised land, he used Joshua.
See, I knew that boy was going to preach. I, like probably many who have the call, hesitated with that call for a number of years. I did what they call, I ran from it. But the more I spent time with my grandfather, and the more I spent time in ministry, the more I believe the Lord nurtured my heart to accept this call.
While many found hope and joy within the walls of 1488 Belt, the neighborhood surrounding the church continued a steady decline. Businesses that breathed so much life into the area years before had left. Young, prosperous families made their way to the suburbs for new homes.
I think of Eastern Boulevard as a child. I saw a thriving community. I saw a community where businesses were prominent throughout the community, and I saw African Americans working there, owning their own businesses as well.
With each passing year, more and more homes and buildings lay abandoned and abused. By the late 70s, several members urged Reverend Davis to consider moving Friendly Temple to the suburbs. Indeed, it was time for a move. 1488 Belt had become too small for this growing congregation. But Pastor Davis had a higher purpose. Instead of moving to the suburbs, in 1979 the church staked another claim, a vacant lot, right around the corner on Martin Luther King Drive.
When we built the church across the street, it was surrounded by vacant, abandoned buildings. We bought a piece of lot, a piece of property, and just built right there, surrounded by all of that. And really, the lots around us reflected the community.
Plans to build a new church were set in motion. It was a pledge to invest in the area at a time when so many chose to flee. Yet Pastor Davis, a strong believer in financial responsibility, refused to build without the funds. And so a fierce campaign to raise the money was launched.
We sold chicken dinners. We had the $25 plate dinners. We put on a big production called Panorama in Black.
It was basically a retrospective of about 4 or 5 musicals. And so we did that. We did it at the Plantation Dinner Theater in order to raise some funds. And then it was such a hit until the Plantation invited us back to produce it.
It was a wonderful experience with the way we had fun raising the money. We enjoyed it.
After 7 years of fundraising, construction was finally underway by May of 1986. 8 months later, on a cold winter day in January, the congregation marched from 1488 Bell Avenue to their new building, and the doors at 5544 Martin Luther King Drive were open.
This morning when I rose, this morning when I got up out of my bed, this morning when I rose, Lord, I know the Lord,
Building a brand new church in the midst of what appeared to be rubble would not be the last project Friendly would take on. Honoring senior citizens, Pastor Davis led the church to build a senior living duplex, 1 block from the church. Members who were retirees would have the opportunity to live there rent-free. But by 1993, dramatic changes were in store for Friendly Temple. Reverend R.F. Davis, diagnosed with cancer, faced the limitations of his weakening body.
Watching him come into our church every Sunday, basically medicated, and he would come in, and all of a sudden when he got behind the pulpit, you would see this strong man stand there and he'd preach, and then the minute he stopped, it's like he went back into that weakness of his sickness, and I think it was just a hard time for us as a church.
One Wednesday evening in 1991, an ailing Pastor Davis confessed to the members of Friendly that he needed someone else to stand in and lead them as he battled his illness. He asked them to accept his grandson, Reverend Michael Jones, for the job. After all, Reverend Jones had already served as a close assistant to Pastor Davis for nearly 2 years. By the end of the night, the congregation would express its support for Reverend Jones as their interim pastor. Pastor Davis had invested so much to develop his grandson for leadership, and in his last days, he would reveal his high hopes for this young protege.
Before he passed on, we went to his house, and we went in his bedroom, and he said, "Close the door." You know, we closed the door. He said, "Now look, I need you all to be there for your brother." I said, "No, we will. No, I need you to be there because he's going to be the next pastor." They were like, "Well, okay. And I don't want you to just tell me, okay. I want you to be there for your brother." I mean, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay, because I'm passing it on to him."
Reverend Jones stood in for his grandfather until November 1993, when Pastor Davis died at the age of 83. The church would mourn deeply. for they had lost their teacher, their preacher, and their friend.
I know I am a child of God. Let me hear it.
Oh, he was to me was a good leader and a good teacher, and he learned me a lot.
I learned some of everything from River. If it hadn't been for River, I don't know where I'd have
It was fun, and then it was stern, and then I guess he was just like a father.
We just had a liking, a loving for each other, you know. He was my friend and I was his friend.
He had a vision. He had a scope of, I guess, perception of what should happen in community and all of that. But the greatest inspiration for me is how he cared and nurtured the people that he led.
Undeniably, Pastor Davis had a strong desire for his grandson to succeed him in the ministry, and he believed the Lord would allow his dream to come to pass, even though he would not live to see it.
Yes, I'm a dreamer. And God grants my dream.
But the members of Friendly Temple would ultimately have to determine who would be their next pastor. For nearly 40 years, they had known only one. Who would they choose to carry on the work that R.F. Davis had begun?
That moment in Memphis when the bullet penetrated his flesh and the cry went out from Memphis to California and New York.
After a month of prayer and meditation, the congregation put it to a vote in January 1994. The decision? Unanimous. Reverend Michael Jones.
Folk didn't appreciate him. They talked about him. They scandalized his name. They even put him on the cross. But it took after his death that people sat down and said, surely this must have been the Son of God.
I am in a unique situation. Typically, pastors don't pastor churches that they were brought up in. You have people who have raised you, people who have disciplined you, and sometimes it's hard to garner that respect. But because I was raised here, they watched me, there was a transition of hearts very quickly.
Pastor Jones would waste no time unveiling his vision for Friendly Temple.
The original vision, it was actually, for me, a continuance. It was a continuation of what my grandfather had begun. In a sense, I feel like I've just picked up the baton and carried and continued the race on. He used to say to me that I'll give you the ball, and if you drop it, it's your fault.
The goal was to hold on to the ball and carry it to new heights. Soon, Pastor Jones began to share the dream with others.
Sunday morning, he said, come and go with me, Deacon. When we went out back of the church and looked toward the east, he said, the Lord have shown me all of this could be ours. He said, I want you to go Monday and see about getting that building. There was a building butting up to the church, and we had tried 2 years before that to get the building. And I said to myself, what's wrong with this preacher? Is he crazy? Well, I just told him yesterday we couldn't get that building.
It was a dilapidated 4-family flat where the ceiling had collapsed on the second floor. In the weeks following Pastor Jones' request, a surprised Deacon Joyner was able to obtain the necessary information about the flat. The church was able to buy it, demolish it, and begin to clean up the block that surrounded them.
After that, each one of those buildings that he told me to go and check on and see if we can acquire, the Lord just blessed us with.
Investing in property in the community was to serve as a visible example of how faith and perseverance can bring about miraculous change, physical, and most importantly, spiritual.
The vision at that time was building and renewing a community through renewing the hearts of people who are present in the community.
Pastor Jones knew he needed to reinforce the church's focus on the mission of uplifting the community. For guidance, he turned to the ultimate answer book, the Holy Bible. The book of Joshua gave him profound direction.
I will do great things. Now listen to what he tells Joshua, and I love this.
He was inspired by the story of the Israelites marching around the walls of Jericho to take claim of the land God had promised them. Pastor Jones believed it was the church's destiny. Friendly Temple would forge a march of its own in September 1995.
Matter of fact, Joshua, as far as your eyes can see. He said, Joshua, what I want you to understand is everywhere you place your feet, it's your land. I don't underestimate God. I plan on stopping at Bethel. Look, if God says go to King's Highway, I'm going to the King's Highway. If he tells me to keep on going.
Ministers were out front with the pastor. We had Elder Hunt, was one of the elders of the church, because he had been in ministry for probably over 50 years. He got a chance to get in that march with us, and we upheld him as he walked around. That was a very moving time.
Recharged in its presence and purpose in the community, the congregation of Friendly Temple seemed to heighten its commitment to the ministry as a whole. Praise and worship at Friendly intensified. Attendance at weekly Bible study classes continually blossomed, and a refreshed devotion to relevant preaching, teaching, and the study of God's holy word fueled a more rapid growth in membership than Friendly had ever seen before. By the late 1990s, the church at 5544 Martin Luther King Drive was regularly filled to capacity. Membership had grown to more than 800. Soon, the church that Friendly had built just a decade earlier would be too small. Pastor Jones began to consider a solution. A look across the street sparked a revelation of sorts. He set his sights on what was then an old abandoned warehouse at 5515 Martin Luther King Drive. It was a building that needed some work, but in Pastor Jones' eyes, it could become something great, not only for serving the members of the church, but for reaching out to the community. Friendly Temple purchased the warehouse in September of 1998. Though opportunities literally seemed to fall right in front of Friendly, some members would have their doubts about the purchase.
I used to work in this building. It was a laundry at the time, back in 63, 64. And when he said we was going to purchase this building and we're going to do some great things, that's the only thing I could remember was that laundry, great big place that didn't look suitable for what he wanted to do with it.
And there were others who saw the building firsthand and wondered if anything could really become of it.
When we first came into the door, the building was full of pigeons. It was terrible. There was needed a lot of work inside it for tuck pointing. There was a lot of openings. There was holes in the roof. It was a mess.
Man, we moved clothes, lots of clothes, and a lot of tires, and just bulks of trash. Seemed like it would never stop.
Certain areas, there was a lot of debris. I didn't want to walk there. I thought there were rats or other sort of things.
It was heartbreaking. It truly was.
I would say for the most part, the group that was there, we were pretty discouraged in terms of really seeing anything beautiful come out of this warehouse facility. But Pastor Jones had a vision.
And that vision would soon come to light, but not before taking care of some important business. Carrying on Pastor R.F. Davis's financial philosophy, Pastor Jones required that major renovation of the facility be put on hold until all initial debt was paid in full. That day would come just 2 months later, in November 1998. To celebrate, the congregation marked the occasion with a special dedication ceremony.
You know, God is good, and He made a way.
We know that if God changes hearts, communities will thrive.
That if the church is in the community, the community ought to be affected by the church. All the tuck pointing work, all the renovations, and really a sum total of about $500,000 we have paid cash for. And the renovation of this building, we plan on paying cash for that too. This is your tithe, your offering, all that overtime you've been doing to bring money. This is where it's going. Now, we're just going to burn.
Over the next 3 years, a team of Friendly Temple architects and engineers spearheaded the effort to turn the old warehouse into something that the church and the community could be proud of. Through months of collaboration, the team gradually saw the impossible become quite possible. When renovations were complete, 5515 Martin Luther King Drive would become a hub for church and community life, providing a worship center, also known as the Dome, a throne room for prayer and meditation, offices, meeting rooms, classrooms, and a gymnasium for sporting and fitness activities.
Really did come together in a magnificent way.
We had just left the previous church, and it was home to us. So to seek out another place of worship was quite challenging. And it was such a good feeling to feel at home again.
Every time we visited another church, we were like, well, why didn't we just go to Friendly today?
Granted us the grace, granted us the strength.
We thought Pastor Jones did a wonderful job of delivering in a very intelligent sermon. It was something that you could truly understand, relate in your life. You could grow spiritually with. You could internalize it and take it with you.
Now, Lord, that you will speak unto us.
Years ago, not many could imagine the explosive growth that was ahead for Friendly Temple. When the main worship services moved into the Dome, the Friendly Temple family expanded from 800 to nearly 4,000 in 2 to 3 years. Naturally, the church would see many changes as the congregation grew, yet a lot of those changes would remain rooted in the very past that had paved the way for modern-day Friendly Temple. One connection to the past involved Friendly's support of youth. Pastor Jones insisted that the church stay committed to preserving its heritage of nurturing youth.
As the youth in Friendly Temple, I learned that Pastor Jones does not judge us, and it's nice to feel that way because with the community today, a lot of people judge the youth, and knowing that you can come to a church and not be is really comforting.
I've just learned to just not think about myself and just put myself aside and let God work through me and just not worry about the plans that I have and just worry about the things that God has planned for me.
The church has underscored its support for the youth by implementing Friendly Youth Church. Each month, the youth conduct their own worship services in the former sanctuary at 5544 Martin Luther King, now named the Youth Worship Center. With adult guidance, they get the chance to praise and worship God in their own way.
You know, you see a lot of kids, you know, they come out and you just want them to know Christ and just being able to share that, and it's just a great thing, and I'm glad that I get the opportunity to do it.
It's like we're building a foundation. You know, you have to start when children are young because the enemy is going to start when they're young. So if we could kind of combat that just a little bit and encourage them while they're still babies, then that'll help them in the future.
Friendly's investment in the future would also be linked to its aggressive efforts to build and renovate in the surrounding community. In 2002, Friendly would undertake yet another project, a senior living apartment complex on a stretch of land adjacent to the lot where Friendly's first apartments for seniors stood. Friendly Village, the new senior apartments, would be constructed in partnership with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. By the end of 2003, the $5.5 million complex would become home to 59 residents. Friendly Village would transform the entire landscape of the block.
The entire path here for our community development, expansion of a worship center.
Friendly Temple is a church with big plans for the future, not only for itself and its members, but plans for a continued press toward revival of a community. Families and businesses had deserted the area in droves. Now the church has hopes of sparking a migration back to the area.
We want a community, and all the parts that takes, we want to do that, bringing businesses back as well, so that people will cherish being in this community and not have to leave it at all.
The church's efforts to create a more inviting neighborhood can certainly be seen in the work it has championed in recent years. From 2000 to 2005, Friendly helped bring together various resources to support projects that represent a value of over $15 million in community development. That includes a second senior complex that Friendly will begin building in late 2005, another venture in partnership with HUD. Valued at nearly $4.6 million, the complex will extend Friendly Village to provide 52 additional apartments for senior living.
I think one of the things that keeps me at Friendly Temple, along with the teaching, the solid teaching that we get here, is Friendly's commitment to the community. So many churches are leaving the community. We believe that once you succeed, you should stay in the community and try to give some of that success back into the community and help the community to grow.
The plan is to help cleanse the neighborhood of dilapidated buildings and wasted facilities, and then renovate and rebuild for a new day. Friendly Temple is continually working to remove decaying structures along Martin Luther King Drive to clear the way for beautifying the neighborhood. The dream includes establishing a school and other facilities to house learning programs for children and adults, like the fine arts program planned for the Friendly-owned building named the Preservation Center. The dream also envisions new homes, an expansive youth facility, a daycare, recreational facilities, restaurants, shops, and other commercial establishments, all in favor of reshaping perceptions of what this area of St. Louis represents, even challenging a perception that the late Pastor Davis may have held.
When people were asking him why would he stay in this community and build a church over around abandoned buildings, he would say that I'm a ghetto preacher. I want to stay in the ghetto. I want to stay with our people. Well, one of the things we say is that, yes, it was a ghetto when we started, but it will not remain a ghetto. And so in a few years or even now, I'm hoping that people will no longer refer to this community as a ghetto.
With a congregation that's already beginning to fill the dome to capacity, new expansion of church facilities is certainly on the horizon. But the biggest challenge that Friendly will face may be to remain meaningful to the ever-growing and ever-changing masses of people that worship here every week.
You get large, or so large, sometimes people feel lost in the shuffle. And I want every individual to feel a part of this congregation. And so we're still, our goal is still to reach them, to nurture them, and to make every person feel important while they're here.
Some have witnessed a caring support at Friendly during their most trying times.
My family had gone through a tragedy, and my fondest memory, I've had others, but my fondest memory since I've been here is how the church was such a support system for me through their prayers and simply being there.
Just being here and being a part of this family when I was going through my cancer treatment, having the support of my pastor and the choir and just this church family was so uplifting for me.
When I had my accident and I lost my leg and my whole life was kind of shook up, I got a lot of support from the people at Friendly.
And such support has been a key part of the effort to make sure Friendly continues to be
a church that cares. I'm truly blessed to be pastor here at Friendly. I think that the people provide more blessings to me than I do for them as well. And I pray that if the first 10 years of my pastorate is like this, I can't imagine what the next 10 or 20 will be. I hope it's very close because God has really blessed this congregation and blessed me to lead it.
The history of Friendly Temple is already a remarkable story, but it's one that's still being written.
I think it's absolutely right that social revolution and all those things should begin with the church. And I think that it's powerful that the gospel message is going out and that the community is blossoming around the church as it ought to. If a place doesn't get better with the church sitting in the center of it, as our pastor would say, it's an indictment against the people who worship there.
While Friendly Temple looks forward to the future, the foundation laid by those of the past can never be forgotten. The church pioneers laid the bricks that allowed Friendly to stand and prosper through tests and trials. Determined people who didn't shy away from uncertainties on the road ahead, knowing that faith would light the way.
We had good times and bad times. And we worked over at Old Friendly Temple to get here where we at now. I sold my shovel a day. I have did my cooking, and we work hard. And this is home to me.
But it's just an honor to be a part of Friendly.
I have been truly blessed since I've been a member of Friendly. I'm just at home.
I've been there ever since '69, and I'm not ever intend to leave there.
So I just love my church, and I'm glad to be here and be a part of Friendly Temple.
We just believe that the Lord has, in a sense, almost opened the Red Sea and allowed his people to walk to the other side. It's a miracle in progress, and we're grateful to experience it.